Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Just Talking About Sports. I'm Ethan.
I'm Drew.
And Drew, what are we doing today?
Just talking about sports. Let's go, baby.
Very enthusiastic. Thank you very much. And welcome, Drew, to our channel, my fellow Butler sports media major himself. And
Thank you.
Yep. And today we're going to be talking. This will be a little bit more special episode, as we haven't really talked about fantasy football up until then. But we thought now that the playoffs have started, we're like, we might as well start talking about it while we can, give people the advice that they need for the fantasy football playoffs. So today we're going to be giving people the clear starters, the teams to leave on the bench, like the sit-ems. Plus, we'll even have some players that are under the radar that you might want to also keep in your lineup and start. So without further ado, let's just get right into it with our first starter, or our key starters that we're going to be having. First starter for a quarterback is going to be Justin Herbert from Atlanta. So Drew, I'll let you start off with this one.
All right, Justin Herbert, he's playing the Atlanta Falcons. Now, Justin Herbert has had a rough go of it for the past 2 weeks, where he had 18 points against Buffalo. I know for Justin Herbert, he's had an insane year. 18 points, that doesn't seem like a dud for most quarterbacks, but for Justin Herbert, it has been. And against Patriots, against Bill Belichick's stifling defense, he only had 4.36 points. But we think that Justin Herbert is going to bounce back in a big way against Atlanta. Atlanta Falcons, they're the third worst in passing yards allowed per game. And before that, Justin Herbert was on fire. He had a 10-game touchdown streak until it got ruined.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Belichick is the only reason why that Herbert had that rough game, because Bill Belichick is just complete other god when he's versing rookie quarterbacks. He uses his special kryptonite or special powers that he has.
I don't know what it is, but young quarterbacks, for some reason, they just struggle against Bill Belichick. And for whatever it happened to Herbert, it happened to your boy Tua, it happened to Kyler Murray, even though he was dealing with a shoulder injury. But it's just what Bill Belichick does. It's what he's very good at. The defensive mastermind, greatest coach of all time. But Justin Herbert, we think he will bounce back in a large way against the Falcons. Yep. So the next player we'll get right into is Ethan, your guy. You're the Dolphins guy. We'll let you talk about him. Myles Gaskin.
Yes, Myles Gaskin. This is going to be a tough matchup, I think, in my opinion, against the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes and everybody. But today we're just going to be focusing more on the offense. This has to do with Myles Gaskin. And Myles Gaskin, he had his first game back after his MCL sprain that he had for 3 weeks. He was out, and the Dolphins were scrambling for running backs, as Matt Breida and Salvon Ahmed were the other two guys that they had, along with Jordan Howard, which people might remember, but they decided to release him also 3 weeks prior because he hadn't been doing really much for the Dolphins, so they just had to end up releasing him, which is fair enough to him because Myles Gaskin came out of nowhere, and for us Dolphins fans, it was surprising. But in his last game that he had against the Bengals in last week's game, he had 21 touches and with 90 yards, with 2 receptions for 51 yards too. So he's been getting the ball like it's no tomorrow in Miami. He's obviously the only guy in Miami that's going to be running the ball, so he's going to be on the field. And Kansas City, surprisingly, being the 10-1 team or 11-1 team that they are, they have the 6th worst rushing defense in the league. And it's just surprising that Kansas City has it. But I feel like Myles Gaskin will be able to take a hold of that, and this is basically a clear start, as now that Myles Gaskin is back, he should be in any fantasy person's lineup is available. He's finally off the IR, and for the people who need him as a RB2 or a flex, he's a great starter for there.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. I think Myles Gaskin, where volume is king, especially in PPR leagues, I think Myles Gaskin takes the cake as far as running backs go. Other than James Robinson, I don't know if there's going to be another running back that can go uncontested in the backfield like Myles Gaskin. What you said, Matt Breida is on the COVID list. Salvon Ahmed is still dealing with shoulder problems. And especially considering what Melvin Gordon, a running back who hasn't really had the best season fantasy-wise, he rushed for over 100 yards against the Chiefs defense. So even though the Chiefs are 10-1, their defense is very much bend but don't break. And I think Myles Gaskin has the potential for a very big game.
Yeah, this game is going to be a very high-scoring game, in my opinion, because I feel like it's going to be another one of those shootouts, because last time Miami versed the number 1 offense in the league at the time, which was the Cardinals, it was a 34-31 game with both offenses getting fantasy points aplenty. So I feel like this is a great game for Gaskin. It's a great way to segue into another player, Tyler Lockett, Well, I'll start off with this one again as
I'll hand it off to you. Being a
just
Tyler Lockett owner.
just because I am a Tyler Lockett owner in most of my leagues at the moment. I did draft him from the beginning, and he's a boomer bust player. So for what is it this week though, I feel like Tyler Lockett has a lot more potential as he's versing the laughing stock, the horrendous, the garbage fire, any type of word to describe garbage but just throw winless in there because the Jets are indeed still winless. The winless Jets. So Tyler Lockett should have no problem getting points aplenty against this Jets team that it was the 31st worst in passing yards allowed per game, with the Seahawks being the only other worst team. So it's gonna be fun watching these two passing defenses go at it. Plus, there's another thing with Jamal Adams. I mean, he's coming back home, but
Jamal Adams revenge game.
That's a Jamal Adams revenge game. So that's gonna be interesting. But for Tyler Lockett's sake, he's always been the quote unquote number 2 to DK Metcalf all season long, despite one of his 50 game bombs that he had. But I feel like Tyler Lockett, this is a game for him to prove that he can be fantasy reliable. And this is indeed going to be one of his boom games.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. The Jets, they're winless. They just fired their defensive coordinator, Greg Williams. So I don't know what direction they're going to go in as far as defense goes. And even though the media has been hyping up DK Metcalf like there's no tomorrow, what people don't realize is that Tyler Lockett has had 9+ targets in 3 of their last 4 games. So even though the media loves DK Metcalf, and DK Metcalf is leading the whole league in receiving yards,
Yep.
Tyler Lockett is feasting in and of itself. And it's not like he's not getting looks. Russell Wilson is definitely throwing the ball his way. And I think against a porous defense like the Jets, Russell Wilson will continue to look Lockett's way.
It's going to be a 42 to 17 type of game, or that's even if the Jets can score. But then again, it's the Seahawks defense, so we'll see.
It's the Seahawks. Let's slow down now. Let's not make any predictions that are too bold. But I do like the Seahawks going forward against the Jets.
All right.
It's always a good matchup when you're playing the Jets.
Exactly. That ends our clear starters that we have, because we're just going to be going through the quarterback, running back, and wide receiver, because those are the most important positions. And the other ones should be pretty obvious, because who cares about kickers and defenses and tight ends? There's pretty obvious ones. And
tight ends.
Yes.
Tight ends. Let me just say this about tight ends. Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, TJ Hawkinson, and then there's everybody else.
Yes.
I'm predicting that a lot of teams that will win championships will have one of those 3 tight ends going forward.
Exactly. So now we're going to be moving on to the sit-ums, or the people that you should not be putting into your lineup, which is a little bit more advice, because those are the fantasy people who can't make their decisions last minute for these playoffs. It's the most important 3 weeks of their lives right here for fantasy players. So these are the players that you don't want to start off with. So I'm going to let you start off with this one. We'll start off with some Josh Allen against Pittsburgh, believe it or not.
Of course. I mean, Josh Allen, like Justin Herbert, been on fire. But we think that the matchup against a top 5 defense in most statistical categories will not work in Josh Allen's favor. I mean, like I said before, Pittsburgh has absolutely just a vaunted defense. TJ Watt and that linebacking core will make life miserable for Josh Allen. And the last time he played a defense as good as Pittsburgh's, which was New England, he put up a dud for Josh Allen standards. He only had 12 points. He does not play very well against top defenses.
Yeah, I mean, even though Pittsburgh's missing Bud Dupree, and even though they just lost to the nameless football team in Washington, a Washington football team, oh my goodness. But I feel like Pittsburgh's going to be able to bounce back, especially against Buffalo. I know this is good. This could be looking like a high-scoring game, but I feel like Pittsburgh's going to be able to contain Josh Allen a lot more than people think. Pittsburgh's literally top 5 defense in literally almost every category. They have the most sacks. They have one of the best in the least points allowed in the entire league. It's going to be a low scoring, it's basically a boomer bust. It's going to be either 30 to something, or 30 to 30, or it's just going to be like a 17 to 10 game. But I think it's for us. I think it's going to be the 17 to 10 game, because I think Josh Allen's going to have a hard time throwing the ball in that Pittsburgh secondary, and their front line's going to get to Josh Allen very often. So as much as Josh Allen has been reliable all season, I'm just putting a fair warning on beware of Josh Allen, especially this week.
With all those studs that Pittsburgh has on defense, we believe that you should look elsewhere if you have another option going forward this week. And for a running back that we think we should sit, Ethan, you want to take this one?
Yes, we believe that Miles Sanders against New Orleans the time is up with Miles Sanders. I mean, anybody who still has that on his team, he was a projected ninth overall pick in most fantasy leagues. He was supposed to have a great year for this Eagles team, but he's on the Eagles, and the Eagles have just been a disaster and a half and more, as they just don't like on offense. Things they've just gotten worse and worse and worse. Last week he only ran for a total of 31 yards. 31 yards, and you're telling me
against Green Bay, and
yes,
me being a Packers fan, I expected a lot more out of Miles Sanders. You know, in Green Bay, as far as run defense goes, there's the butt of all jokes, and the fact that Miles Sanders only had 10 touches in the game for 31 yards, he has been all but phased out of the offense. And whether it's Doug Peterson calling the plays, I don't think they have a direction of what the heck they're doing in Philadelphia anymore. I mean, they just moved on from Carson Wentz, and they're deciding to start Jalen Hurts. And Carson Wentz, he has a fat contract. And the fact that they're moving on to their second-round draft pick really says a lot to me about how much the Eagles are truly struggling on offense. And we think that Miles Sanders he just is not going to do much against New Orleans, a defense that has quietly become one of the best in the league.
They are literally the best. If you look at statistically, they have given up the least rushing yards per game. They have the sack leader in oh god, I can't think of the guy's name right now.
Was it Trey Hendrickson?
I think it's Henderson. Yes. So
Hendrickson?
It's Hendrickson, one of those. But the New Orleans defense has shut down every single run. I mean, they let Todd Gurley only run for about like 30, 40 yards too last week. And I think that Sanders again will just get run into a wall against this New Orleans defense. And I think Sanders, I don't even think if he's reliable this week. I don't think he's reliable for the rest of the season. So if you have Sanders, I'm sorry, there's plenty more options out there. And I feel like you should just keep him on the bench and don't ever think about him again for the rest of the season. So now we're going to be moving on to our wide receiver pick, which I'll let Drew start off with.
All right, our wide receiver pick, even though we think this game is going to be an absolute slugfest, I mean, I don't know, Ethan, what do you think here?
Calvin Ridley on Atlanta versus the Chargers, two teams that are stacked offensively on paper versus two weak teams on defense that have just found ways to choke. It's literally the battle of the choke lures. I can't wait to see what happens, because these two teams at the start of the year were going back and forth at who could find ways to choke the hardest. Atlanta was choking 99% chances of winning, and the Chargers were secretly choking every single close game they possibly could. It's just hilarious. And now they're going to be versing each other. It's like, this is literally the choke off. So
of course. And with Calvin Ridley, I mean, he has a fantastic matchup in the Chargers, but we think this is going to be one of our hotter takes of the week. We think that you should sit Calvin Ridley this week. And we just think that, you know, with the Chargers decimated secondary, this is Julio Jones' season. Julio Jones, Hayden Hurst. We believe they are going to feast against this secondary. Not much room for Calvin Ridley here. So we think we're going to leave him on our sit list for this week.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a Julio day. I don't think it's going to be a Calvin Ridley day. And because surprisingly, like another team that's been sneaking, or at least not the team that's been sneaking on the radar, is the defense that's been sneaking on the radar. The Chargers secondary has been unbelievable this season. 5th best in least passing yards allowed per game, which despite them giving up 45 points against the Patriots, probably thinking that can't be true. Well, let's remember the Patriots scored 21 points on special teams. So exclude those 21 points plus Cam Newton passing for under 100 yards. I mean, teams aren't beating the Chargers on the run. They're not beating them on the pass, they're beating them through the run. And that's why I think that anybody on this passing offense for the Falcons could find trouble finding targets in a game where it could be a high scoring game, or I think it's most likely going to be a high scoring game. But I just don't think they're going to be throwing Calvin Ridley's way, because I feel like the people in the Chris Harris's, the Desmond Kings, the All those guys in that back secondary, they're Pro Bowl secondary that they have on the Chargers. I feel like they're going to be able to shut them down. So,
Yeah.
all right. Now we'll move on to our final section, which is we've had our startums, we've had our situms, but these are going to be the players that are kind of might be still on like on the waivers, or players that you might be like sneaky. Oh, there we go. Some sleepers, or the under the radars right there. Players that that might be still on the waivers that you should be picking up, especially for this week, as they've got great matchups and they've got huge potential for going big points for people who need them, with players like Miles Sanders and Calvin Ridley. If you have them looking like they're not going to have a good game, we'll start going after these players to start for this week. And with one of those players, you have to go with the guy that you like, that Kirk Cousins.
I do like that, Ethan. In fact, even though I'm a Packers fan, I have been loving me some Kirk Cousins in fantasy leagues. Now, people don't realize just how good Kirk Cousins has been. Like when you think of Minnesota's offense, you think that it is Dalvin Cook's season. However, Kirk Cousins is the quarterback 11 on the season, a borderline top 10. And I was lucky enough to find him on the waivers in most leagues myself. And how that has happened, I don't know. But I have been starting him, and I have had me some happy Kirk Cousins. And I think there will be happy Kirk Cousins aplenty going forward.
Yes, especially in a game against Tampa Bay, which their defense, their defensive front is very good. The issue that has been plaguing them the entire season has been their secondary. Pretty much garbage. I could not name a single player on their secondary right now, because they're just kind of like one of those no names. They've been struggling. They've been letting teams like, even like we said, Justin Herbert go and just go deep bomb after deep bomb after deep bomb. And with players like Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen on there that have been helping Kirk Cousins succeed better and better and better, I feel like he's going to have an even better game. This could be very well a shootout game where Kirk Cousins could throw for 3 passing touchdowns and he could have at least 300 passing yards. So he's a very solid streaming option for people in the playoffs that they're going to be looking for.
Now, I agree. I couldn't agree more with you. And Kirk Cousins, I think he's a fantastic streaming option this week and going forward. He will certainly be staying on my rosters for the duration of the playoffs.
Great sneaky waiver wire indeed. So now we're going to be moving on to the running back, who we have as basically a guy that's going to be stepping in place due to an injury that happened in last week that kind of destroyed some of the fantasy players and owners' hearts when he went down, and he's not looking bright for his week. So we have J.D. McKissic against San Francisco. So the reason we said the guy who went down, that's Antonio Gibson. He was finally reaching his full potential in Washington until last week when he ended up getting turf toe, which that could very well keep him out of the game against San Francisco. And it's looking like things aren't looking great for him against San Francisco this week. And Gibson used to have 70% of the snaps. So now that he's going to be out, who's going to be getting the snaps? J.D. McKissic, and for him in PPR leagues, he's been a god the entire season. You could have start Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissic and still be good in fantasy all season long. So seeing that J.D. McKissic is now by himself, are you kidding? He's just going to go off for even more.
J.D. McKissic would not go away all season, and especially as Ethan, you were live and die by Antonio Gibson all year since I've talked to you. I understand it was very sad. It was very heartbreaking when you saw Antonio Gibson hobble off the field with that turf toe. You know, we pray for the best for him, speedy recovery. However, J.D. McKissic is going to be PPR gold. And if you have him now, it is the time to break him out, because against Pittsburgh, he had 70% of the snaps. I don't think Peyton Barber is going to do much. And J.D. McKissic, even so, he was involved in the run game with Pittsburgh, and he had 10 catches out of the backfield. That is insane productive. He is PPR gold, and we think he has true running back one upside for your team going forward. So if you manage to grab J.D. McKissic and stash him, or if he's somehow on your waiver wire, grab him. But for those J.D. McKissic managers, congratulations, because you have an absolute stud going forward in the playoffs.
It's people who got him are just lucky. I'm so pissed. I didn't have it. I'm so pissed that Gibson went down. But even though against the San Francisco team this week that has been a little bit better against the run, J.D. McKissic is turned into the Austin Eckler of last year, where he'll get the 10 catches and score 10 points just from the receptions himself, plus how many yards he gets. Plus, he's been getting even more and more involved in the run game, like you said. He's just going to have himself a game. So,
and it's crazy as it seems. Since Alex Smith, who's been the story of the year, since he's taken over as quarterback of the Washington football team, J.D. McKissic has been the running back 9, and that is with Antonio Gibson healthy, a top 10 running back that people have stashed or are still on the waiver wire for some reason. That is a player that you cannot find anywhere else. Go get him.
You just got to do your research. And if he's still there, please get him. We're telling you, please. Especially since it's going to be later in the week, please get him. So now we're going to be moving on to our final player of our fantasy football playoff expertise advice. And that player is going to be Corey Davis against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I know Drew's been waiting to talk about him, so I'm going to let you go ham with him.
I've been jonesing about Corey Davis, and just like J.D. McKissic, he is a guy that if he is on waiver wires, what are you doing? Go get him. Corey Davis, he was a first-round draft pick in 2016, really hasn't lived up to his billing, but this year he has stepped in behind A.J. Brown, been the wide receiver 2, and has been quite dependable for Ryan Tannehill. Even in a run-first offense, Corey Davis finds room to explode. He's had double-digit fantasy points in 6 of his last 7 games with an absolute explosion against the Browns with 12 targets, 11 receptions, and 132 yards against the Browns. And in a matchup against Jacksonville, where they're the 4th worst in passing yards, so bottom feeder of the league, and with A.J. Brown dealing with an ankle injury in practice where it's not looking great for him to play, if A.J. Brown sits, fire up Corey Davis. Start him. Grab him. It will be Corey Davis season in Tennessee, and he will be fantastic for you this week and going forward.
Yes, Corey Davis is a big guy. I'm surprised if anybody had him on the waivers, let alone had them on their bench, because surprisingly, I'm pretty sure he's had 10 plus targets in his last, like I said, in almost like the last three or four games that he's been in. He's been seeing the ball so often, especially since the Titans have been struggling to pull away in games and be able to just run the ball like legitly with Derrick Henry, like they were at the start of the season. Like in his first game, it was week 2 against the Jags. He didn't do as well, but that is the issue. That's when Derrick Henry's season was still going on. But since Derrick Henry's been shut down, it's going to now be Corey Davis season, and they're going to be passing the ball more, especially if the Jacksonville somehow keeps it within close, which somehow the Jags have been able to do in almost every game that they've had. In these like 3 of the last 4 weeks that they've had, they've been able to make it all the way down to the wire, which means that Tannehill's going to be passing the entire game, which he's going to be passing to Davis the entire the game. So that's why Corey Davis is a unbelievable clear start. Make sure you have him. Please do. We can't say it enough. Just please have him up. He's a sneaky player that could literally get you the gold in this fantasy playoffs team going forward too. So, I mean, you got any final words about Corey Davis?
I mean, I know we called this section sleepers, but J.D. McKissic and Corey Davis, they should not be sleepers. In my opinion, they are league winners. They are guys that can help you win your fantasy leagues going forward. And J.D. McKissic with his PPR gold and Corey Davis truly turning into Ryan Tannehill's security blanket, the possibilities are endless if you have one or both.
Yep, cannot wait. And that's going to probably conclude our fantasy football expertise for, or at least basically stardom, sit-ems, and sleepers for week 14 or the first round of the playoffs, as many fantasy owners have. Thank you, Drew, for coming on and joining us. You'll probably be seeing Drew more on the channel, as me and him have been trying to increase our amount of sports talk that we're going to be having. So stay tuned for that, as we are also increasing the amount of videos that we have on this channel now that I am back and I have plenty of time because I'm a college student without a job and I have nothing else better to do but to post more videos and talk sports. So basically, I hope that everyone has enjoyed. Make sure they're subscribed, and make sure you guys go show some love to Drew. Follow him on Twitter. You could plug yourself right now, or just go check him in the link in the description. Basically, all that will be there. So other than that, I hope everyone has enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.